Hey guys, today we're replacing power steering lines or a couple of power steering lines on this 2007 Toyota Solara, and it has the 3MZFE engine with the 3.3 liter variable valve timing. Now this car has three sets of hoses for the power steering system because the car has a separate reservoir from the pump rather than having the reservoir right on the pump. So it has a line that goes from the reservoir to the pump. It's called a suction line. Then it has a high pressure line that goes from the pump to the steering rack. And then it has a return line from the steering rack back to the reservoir. Today, we'll be replacing the suction line from the reservoir to the pump and a section of the return line from the steering rack back to the reservoir because they're leaking like crazy, and I am not pleased with that. So let's dive into that. But first, we'll cover some part numbers and what kind of tools we're going to need. Let's do it. First things first, the parts themselves. I purchased them from Auto Geek. No, I'm sorry, Parts Geek, partsgeek.com. And you'll see that the part number for that is, I can't quite tell. Well, it's right here actually in the part himself. I'm sorry, guys. Sorry. Part number for the suction line from the reservoir to the pump is PSH04446-C, of course, made in China. And the section of the return line from the steering rack to the reservoir, part number is PSH03630-C. 2025 prices, the suction line goes for about $26. I will be returning this line here. This is part of the return, but from the steering rack, which I won't need. And then the other section of the return line is $32.95. You figure with some taxes and shipping and whatnot, you're looking at $50, $60, $70 or so. So that's your 2025 prices. Now let's jump under the hood and see what we're looking at. As far as getting a job done to replace a couple of these power steering lines, it doesn't require any special tooling other than some pliers for the clamps and some 10mm sockets and ratchets or even wrenches to dislodge the clamps from the body of the car. So what we're looking at is this unit here. This is your reservoir. So let's move the coolant reservoir out of the way. We'll move this out of the way so we have more visual of what we're talking about here. This is your suction line. Here's your reservoir. The suction line, it goes from here. It goes, this reservoir some more. Here it is. It continues here. Here's the suction line. It continues. See it? That's your suction line that continues in the back. And it comes all the way down to the pump right here. Here it is right here. I don't know if you can see it. See this line right here? And that is the suction line that we are replacing. Look what a mess all that leak did, which we'll be cleaning up somewhat as well. I don't like it when it gets this dirty. But anyway, and the other section of the line, the other section of the line, be careful when you get up in case you have a table behind you. And as I was saying, the other section of the line that we'll be replacing is your return to the reservoir, which is this one here. And it runs down there. You'll see it goes on top, runs on top of the frame. And this one is the culprit of all this leaking. And it runs, where are you? Here it is right here. See it? Right in front of, here's this line right here. And we'll be replacing it all the way down to right about in front of the radiator, just above the shroud right here, which will also be taken off. Look at this mess. Look at all this oil leak. This is all from the power steering, guys. This is all from the power steering, which is nuts that it leaks this much. It's probably leaking right there too. Anyway, golly. Also, guys, so we're replacing this to access the lines properly. All right. Now, as far as the oil goes, the procedures for... There is no specific procedures in this book right here. This is a Toyota Camry from 2002 to 2006, and Solara from 2002 to 2008 with either the 4 or the 6 cylinder from Haynes. And if you go to chapter 1, for the power steering system fluid, it calls for Dextron 3 automatic transmission fluid. Now, that being said, they no longer make Dextron transmission fluid, Dextron 3, so I went with STP automatic transmission fluid Dextron 6, and if you read the back, it says right here, this fluid is also suitable, I don't know if you can see it right here, right above my thumb. This fluid is also suitable for use when Dextron 2 or Dextron 3 will, used to be used anyway. So we can use this one here from STP, and it's automatic transmission fluid, and that's what we'll be replacing the reservoir oil with. All right, guys, now let's jump in this job. Let's do it. First thing we're gonna do, guys, is create some access, and we'll do so by removing this shroud here. And there's another panel just behind the front right wheel of the car, and I don't know if you could tell. Well, I already jacked up the car, and I already took the front right wheel off, and I got a feeling that hose is leaking as well. That's too bad. I'm gonna have to change that one also. Okay, so as I was saying, alright, so there's this one here, there's this one here also, and then there's a clip, but we'll remove that with some pliers. I'll be right back. Here's it. Alright, so this one is down. The next panel we'll access is this one here. There's also 10mm bolts, and there's a push-in type clip, and what that will do for us, all this access is to give us a better idea and a better view on what we're going to be doing. And there is another one. There's another axis. It's the one back here. I don't know if you can see it. And all you do is kind of just press in like so. And as long as you don't break it, I think I just did that. I just broke that fit. Anyway, all right, let's move on to the next thing. Next thing we're going to do is empty out the power steering reservoir, and you could do so with a pump like such, which comes from, say, an old soap dispenser, and just put a hose on it or something to that effect. Now, mind you, even though we're emptying out the reservoir, it doesn't mean there is no oil in the system anymore, especially the suction line, because it's a big unit. It has oil, gravity feeding the pump all the way down to the pump. So this hose here, this one here is going to be full of oil. So what we'll do next is we'll disconnect the gravity feeling line, gravity pressure line at the bottom, right at the pump, and we'll empty out the rest of the oil and the suction line at the bottom of the suction line where it meets the pump. And then will also be some oil, but not nearly as much as the suction line, and we'll empty that out in the front. So once those two lines are emptied, then the rest should be relatively easy. But I've said those words before, and it always turns into a nightmare. So we'll speak with a grain of salt. Alright, so this is pretty much done. Now let's go ahead and empty out the rest of the lines at the bottom of the lines. And now, let's go ahead and, this is going to be a little bit messy. We're going to disconnect the suction line from the power steering, and we'll dump the rest of the oil. Well, at least for this hose anyway. Let's see if we can do this without making it too much of a big mess. But I could be mistaken. I've been known to be wrong before. See how much oil came out from the suction line? That's what I was talking about. That's a lot of oil. We managed to capture quite a bit of it anyway. Alright, very nice. We'll have to do some cleaning up for sure. Keep the wife from complaining at a minimum. That's because that's, you know, that's what women do, buddy. You already know that. I ain't got to tell you. Alright, let's go ahead and disconnect the other. Let's clean up over here a little bit first, and then we'll disconnect the other line from the front, and I'll show you where. Alright, guys. Alright, guys. Lastly, we will disconnect the return line about at the bottom here, so that we could drain the remaining part, the remaining oil in the lines. Now, I'm sure you've noticed by now that the oil is brownish in color. And the reason for that, because I've been using this generic Preston from AutoZone power steering fluid in order to get some oil in the system, while so that the wife has oil in the car, until I got around to fixing this massive power steering leak. So that's the reason why you see brown color oil. But otherwise, Dextron 3 or anything higher, that should be of a color the likes of red. So that's what we're going to be putting back in the system. I'm going to use a blade and actually cut this, because this hose is not coming off very easily. Okay, guys, stand by. As I was saying, we're going to use a box cutter here to cut this line and facilitate the removal. Be super careful. Be super careful. You don't want to be... We already made the mistake of breaking that clamp earlier. Let's try not to create any more damage than necessary. Hold on. Okay, this should be sufficient. Cut. Let me get a screwdriver. Let's try it with this. Now we're in the front of the car, the front right side, obviously. There it is. Hopefully this will do it. Will get us to remove this hose and empty out the rest of the oil. Okay, what we're gonna do instead is, as you can see, this hose is not really coming off. What we'll do is remove this 10mm bolts that hold the 8L clamps in place, and this will help, and that will help with this removal of the hose, guys. Otherwise, we're just about there. Let's go remove those clamps. Okay, the clamps I'm talking about are these two right here. There's one 10mm bolt right here, just in front of the alternator. There's another bolt right there. You see it? It's another 10mm. We should be able to remove that with a ratchet and a socket, and then we'll be able to dislodge this line completely. So let's do that. I don't know if you guys can see it right there. See it? It's gonna be a 10mm. I guess if it was easy, I'd have my little girl doing it. The access isn't the best. A lot of this hardware, not a lot of it, but some of this hardware will have to be transferred to the new line, such as these clamps. So we'll clean them up and all that. And here is, I don't know if you can see it, the last, the second, this is coming off. And this will hugely facilitate dumping the remaining oil inside of the return line. Again, these clamps or these 8L clamps or these retainers on the hose, you'll have to transfer them to the new hose. Okay, we're actually able to remove the hose from up here, just pulling on it. And here goes the rest of the oil. Alright, so now we can finally take the hoses off from the reservoir, and we'll install the new ones. Let's do it. And here we go, guys. The lines are finally off. I did have to cut the return line off of the reservoir because it was not coming off. I'm guessing it was still the original lines, whereas this one here, it can slid off pretty easily, probably because of its size. Now, little detail here, just so you know, the return line that comes to the reservoir, which is here, it's routed right behind from the air conditioning lines. It has to go behind and under the air conditioning lines. And the only way that I found so far, a way to facilitate this, is by removing this bolt here of the bracket that holds the AC lines in place. And that should give you enough room to slide the return line from the bottom there, where that, see it right there? That's your return line right there. And yeah, now we're just gonna move all the clamps over and remove these brackets over to the new lines. I'm just gonna have to figure out how these come off, because I have no idea how these come off. So we'll figure this part out, and then we'll reinstall these new lines. However, before I do that, I need to get some cleaning done in here, because this area is filthy. What I'm using for a cleaner is toluene. It's a pretty good cleaner. And then we'll put it all back together. Alright guys, let's do it. Alright guys, we reinstalled the clamps on the new hose. Same here and same here. And these clamps here I was talking about earlier, you bend this tab back, and then this clamp just opens up, and the line came with these new rubber grommets, so I put the new rubber grommets and re-close the clamp and bend, I don't know if you can see it, and then bend the tab back so that the clamp kind of stays in place. Same goes with this one. One at a time, do one at a time, and make sure that when you do install these clamps, the orientation is the same as when you took it off, so do one at a time. I was talking about the Preston, the power steering fluid. I don't remember if I got this at AutoZone or Rally, but this is the generic stuff that I was using. But like I said, we are switching to Dextron transmission fluid, which is what the maintenance manual calls for. As you can see, I did a little bit of cleaning. It looks a whole lot better than it did before. And what I also did is, with the key in the unlocking the steering wheel, I turned the steering wheel several times and primed out and pumped out, without the engine running, all the old oil, because we're going to be introducing new oil. Now, mind you, you won't be able to take all the old oil out, so there's going to be a little bit of mixing involved. Now, the reverse order is to put everything back together. We're going to put the reservoir, run the line, and run the line, and fill up the oil. Then I'll tell you, we'll fill up the system with the oil, and then I'll tell you how to prime the system. Let me show you. I promise you guys, the reassembly goes a lot quicker than the disassembly. Like I said, I cleaned up a little bit. It looks a lot better. I re-put the 10mm bolt of the bracket for the AC lines. see the 10mm bolt for the bracket of the return on the power steering, and the other one down here. There it is, the other 10mm bolt connected. Everything. Double check your work. Make sure you connected all the lines. Just so you know, this line here, most lines have a stop, like a bevel. There's a stop. Push the line all the way to the bevel, and then you put your clip on it. Like I said, check all your work. Make sure everything is connected. Make sure your clamps are back where they were. Reservoir. This reservoir here, it'll clip in, but it won't easily come out. You will have to stick a thin flathead screwdriver back there to move the tab for you to slide the reservoir out if you need it to remove the reservoir. And again, the last one, make sure that, where is it? Make sure that this connection is also properly done. You see it? Now everything is properly connected. We got oil in. Keep in mind, you have your warm minimum and maximum. You have your cold minimum maximum right here. Right now the reservoir is filled to the cold max. Bleeding of the power steering system procedures. Right here, section 22 of chapter 10 on this book here, and it tells you put the oil into the max cold line. Then it tells you to start up the engine, turn the steering wheel left to right, right to left. You don't have to hit the stops, and what it'll do, that will move all the air out of the system. Keep in mind that the oil will go up in temperature. So again, while it's cold, the engine is running, move the steering wheel left to right, right to left. You don't have to hit the stops, so that the oil makes its way through the system and purges all the air out of the system. Keep an eye on the reservoir, top it off if you have to. Once the oil reaches operating temperature, it should be at the max hot level, which is right here. But make sure, so long as it's at the minimum level and it's hot, you're fine. Don't worry about it. But take it for a spin. Also, leak check all your lines, all your fittings. Make sure there's no leaks, because these systems tend to leak. Once it reaches operating temperature, make sure that all the fittings, all the lines, nothing is leaking that you touched. This is also a great opportunity to look around and see if there's any other problems on the car. For example, while I was working, I found the boot. This boot is destroyed from the rack and pinion, so that will have to be addressed next. Alright guys, that's all I have for you. Hopefully this video was of help to you. If you have any questions or comments, as always, leave them in the comment section below. We will see you at the next video. Take care. And one last thing, when you put the wheel back on, keep in mind the torque on the lugs for the wheel is 76 foot-pounds. Alright guys.